A series' notoriety can be determined by many things: writing, visuals, credible visionaries behind it, ratings, good or bad, or even just the numbers it generates. I know for a fact I have seen tons of movies or shows that, despite their massive following or widely received praise, I flat out just did not enjoy for one reason or the other. At the end of the day, opinion is subjective, and there's something out there for everyone. We've discussed countless times on this show how media can appeal to different audiences, and how they also work towards appealing to the audiences beyond their primary one. What is considered art is subject to the eyes of the beholder, and there is no wrong way to enjoy it or create it, unless you use AI. But what if I told you that out there is an indie series that is loved by millions for the sole reason that none of it makes sense? A series that uses a complex, surreal, and abstract way of conveying its story, characters, dialogue, and environment. A series that made its debut during the great quarantine of the 2020s, named Anna. Now, 2020 itself was definitely a memorable year for a lot of people, for obvious reasons. Due to the outside world being otherwise very dangerous, everyone learned to adjust to what was now a mostly digital lifestyle. Though, on May 26, 2020, Peruvian YouTube and Newgrounds animator Joel Guerra, or Joel G, would release the first episode of his new series, Anna. Now, Anna is obviously not the only animated project to release around this time. There were plenty of releases, such as Soul, Onward, the Demon Slayer movie, but Anna is different. Very, very different. Anna was enjoyed by me and many others for its surreal aesthetic and abstract visuals and unconventional way of telling its story. The character designs and dialogue are insanely wacky, and almost nothing in the show looks similar next to each other. Upon watching it for the first time, you would think a lot of it was just visual eye candy meant to make the surreal and otherwise inexplicable seem like it makes sense, but there's clearly something more to digest here. A story hidden in the absurdity. A story about being an outcast in your own body and in your own world. And even the show itself can sometimes make you feel stupid for wondering that there could be something more. You really can just never know with this show. So join me again today as I try to once again explain the inexplicable and comprehend the incomprehensible. Today, we dive in and try to understand the world of what is literally my favorite indie series of all time, Anna. Now, before we get started, let's take a look at Anna herself, the her pronoun being used a little loosely here. Joel stated that Anna's design was inspired by a 1932 painting of Pablo Picasso titled Girl Before a Mirror. The painting itself shows a woman, illustrated to be Pablo's mistress, looking through a mirror with her reflection darker and bleaker than she is. The painting itself is theorized to be Pablo's take on morality or self-deprecation. You could notice her face, rather Picasso's general style of drawing faces is what inspired Anna, being the foundation of her anatomy and her character design. Picasso's faces are abstract for the sake of being abstract, meant to capture someone from every angle, though Joel seemingly used Picasso's art style to make it so that each side of Anna's face represented a different emotion. One side of her, a bright yellow face, her body type smooth and normal, though it doesn't look normal compared to the rest of her. The rest of her in question is a royal blue, and the entirety of her body is very polygonal and rigid. You'll also notice, after doing a bit of research, that Anna wears the Peruvian schoolgirl uniform, which is likely just an aesthetic choice since, as mentioned before, Joel himself is Peruvian. So yeah, a very wacky design, yet really eye-catching, visually appealing, and honestly just kinda cool. Makes you wonder what kind of shenanigans someone like this would get into. And oh boy does she. The first impressions of a character are very important when introducing a show or idea. The first episode of Anna is called Auction Day, and when the episode starts we get a brief look as to what Anna's world looks like, reminiscent of the internet back in the 90s 2000s when it was on less advanced hardware. The kids call it webcore. When we first see Anna, it's in an interaction with Mooney, a reoccurring character portrayed to be a friend of hers. When Anna first speaks, you get the first taste of her character, her first sentence showing her yellow side, speaking in a happy, outgoing male voice, before being immediately cut off as switching to her depressed, self-deprecating, and sad female voice, before reverting back to the latter and apologizing. Immediately you can infer that Anna has some kind of split personality disorder or is meant to be portrayed as such through her frequent emotional outbursts and changes. The episode revolves around Enna and Mooney hastily arriving at the daily auction, where a small funny man hosts an auction to what is seemingly a dead crowd, pun intended by the fact they all look like gravestones. The item being auctioned off in question is a dog in an hourglass, the mere idea of it confusing the auctioneer himself. The gravestone mouth things all cast their bid before Enna and Mooney notice it begins to rain. The rain, of course, being cubes falling out of a bigger cube with half of a face, which is definitely normal. They realize the auction is going to be cancelled, and Enna throws up, much to Mooney's dismay. She's embarrassed and calls herself stupid for doing so, and then her staticky vomit morphs into the same dog that the auctioneers were bidding for. And then it just cuts to credits. At face value, someone would find that to be really weird, and that's all there is to it. Just a bunch of noise and images meant to make the nonsensical seem a bit more comforting. And yes, that's probably true. Since it's the first episode, it's likely Joel meant to set the tone with something short and simple to set the tone for what we'd see from Enna in the future. A personal theory I have about the episode from the few times I've watched it is that the dog is supposed to represent emotion or some kind of genuine feeling, because as we see at the start, Enna hates when she feels blue and tries to mask it the best she can. The fact that the auction is held at a graveyard could also mean that people wish to feel something genuine, which is why the gravestones are bidding so much for it. The fact they're gravestones probably meaning that they're dead inside or something similar. I mean, people love dogs. Maybe in this world, instead of man's best friend, they're I can't feel anything real unless I have one, which is accurate to how dogs are. Dogs are awesome, if you remember correctly. Enna clearly really enjoys the auction, so when the rock rain ruins it, she throws up in front of Mooney, and her vomit morphs into the dog that the auctioneers are bidding for, which could be a metaphor for Enna just venting her real genuine emotion. This could also be why Mooney was a little annoyed at Enna for doing so, saying you should ask before doing that. And when people mask things, it's little things that can break them that cause them to get really emotional. Now, it's likely that my theory is a stretch, and that I'm probably the only one who's thought this. I feel like it makes sense, but it's possible that after watching the series already, I'm letting its future possible themes and deeper meanings lead me to thinking there's meaning where there couldn't be any. But something I've learned from this show is that nothing is ever as it seems, or it is as it seems, but you'll never know. This was the series' first episode, its runtime being barely over 2 minutes. It's weird little animation that would set the tone and give us a slight taste of what Enna had to offer going forward. This is the second episode of Enna, Extinction Party. This episode is 3 minutes longer and would also introduce the episodic pattern of Enna episodes looking like playable and interactive game levels. The first actual playable one is actually released and is on Steam. You can play it for free. It's called Dream Barbecue. Fun fact, this video's script has been sitting in my documents for so long that the script itself talks about Dream Barbecue like it's not out yet. Just to give you some ideas as to how long I've been wanting to make this video. This one revolves around a plot where Enna is searching for Mooney, who appears to be at a party. The bouncer at the front denies her entry at first, which causes her to have another brief yet chaotic meltdown. After snapping back to her senses, the bouncer lets her in after determining she's not a threat, at least to anyone around her. She's probably a threat only to herself, but we'll get into that later. Anna then proceeds into the area where she meets up with someone who she recognizes, a mime-like person named Merci, which is French for thank you. Their conversation is seemingly familiar and friendly as Merci gives her directions to find Mooney. But it's revealed that the actual translation for what Merci is saying to Anna in Korean is in a more aggressive tone. Her real words show Merci telling Enna to get out of here and is scolding her for being there at all. She ends her tangent with her saying by don't accept anything from people around here, which happens to be foreshadowing a bit later. Despite the aggressiveness, it seems Merci was worried for Enna's safety. Yes, Enna walked into a party and talked to a French mime speaking Korean, which makes sense. Despite the aggressiveness, it seems Merci was worried for Enna's safety. Nonetheless, Enna follows Mercy's quote-unquote directions after making her way through another room and past the weird puzzle man. She meets with another man named Robert. In the episode, Robert is aware that Enna is looking for Mooney and tells her that to find Mooney, Enna has to go through a really dizzy pathway behind him. He warns her though that the path for someone unfamiliar to this place could kill her, which doesn't seem to faze her, with her response being good. Like Merci, Robert speaks in another language, this time being Japanese, but his translation is also not true. Robert is speaking Japanese, and in the accurate translation for what he's saying, he tells Enna that what lies in this place is not something Enna should experience, and that she should forget Mooney and leave so she isn't corrupted by sin. It's here you begin to realize that Enna might be a bit delusional. She's essentially an outcast that's friends with someone who often associates herself with a problematic crowd and warps the warnings of people who try to help her, so she feels she can continue to do what she came to do without questioning herself. This is her perspective we're viewing this from after all. She clearly questions and battles with herself a lot based on how we've seen her act. After her conversation with Robert, Anna proceeds down the dizzy hallway, walks up a trippy stairway into an eyeball where Mooney was waiting. Mooney is shocked to see Anna and we realize that not only did that dizzy pathway make Anna super drunk, but she reveals the reason she came all this way and traversed like 5 dimensions was just to tell Mooney that she appreciates her, calling her a gift. Very wholesome, although maybe the reason she's trying to find Mooney is to distract herself from thinking about her chaotic mental state. Anna seems to hate when she vents out her emotions and even warps what people say to her so she hears what she wants to hear. Or maybe I'm projecting. Despite my theories and junk, if any of the episodes could have just been weird for the sake of it, I would probably assume it's this one. This episode expands on what the first one did, showing more of Anna's character and introducing new ones who, despite being very minor in significance, are still very unique in their own way. However, the next one is my personal favorite and does all of that and more. Temptation Stairway. This is the third episode of Enna, with Auction Day being 2 minutes and Extinction Party being about 5. Temptation Stairway offers an entire 17 minutes of Enna time. This is frankly why I consider this episode to be the best one so far, because it takes every chance it can to treat your eyes to abstract visuals and weird characters. This would work out flawlessly for the series, as it's considered the most memorable one with 24 million views as I'm recording this right now. As you'll soon see, the world building in this episode is pure eye candy and does wonders to give this universe more personality. As if it was lacking in that department anyway. This episode begins with Anna and Mooney in an open field filled with people who appear to just be blank mannequins. Mooney spends time getting some sick air on her board, waiting for someone called the Great Runus, who is said to grant a wish to those who find him. While Anna, frankly, is having an emotional crisis and would rather be at home.
I want to go home. I don't like this party. I'm allergic to people.
Mooney dismisses this, and despite Anna's clear distaste for participating, eventually peer pressures her into going along with it. Anna then says probably my favorite quote from this entire series.
I keep hearing voices inside my head. They tell me to eat my veggies.
Mooney then decides to make this event into a bet. Whoever makes it to the Great Runus first and makes a wish has to pay the debts of the loser. Shortly after she makes that bet though, the Great Runus appears, a giant Shadow of the Colossus type creature with 2 legs, a pot-like body, with vines and roses covering it, and the gateway to the Great Runus located on the top. Mooney rushes to pursue it, but as the sky turns green and more people show up, Mooney gets trampled by the crowd as everyone races to the Great Runus. Anna, seeing this, has a mental breakdown and starts sobbing hysterically, saying something that I also quote way too much.
I can't go on! I want to do anything! Someone, please end my struggle!
Anna then seemingly reaches the peak of her meltdown, turning gray and crying. Her body now the same texture, but her noises and voices are just unintelligible. More on this later. Anna proceeds to run through the crowd of people with probably the sickest music I could have never expected to hear. Anna makes a wrong turn and meets a frog named Brick Frog. Brick Frog tries to talk to her, but due to Anna's hysteria, he can't even get a word in. So he, as any normal person would, kicks the shit out of her Sanji style until she gets back to normal. This works, and he wishes her well on her journey and hopes she can get to the Great Runus before time runs out, as he stays behind because he likes to watch the bodies fall. Anna continues to make her way through the crowd as the timer ticks lower. She comes by a Spanish merchant who tries to sell her sweets to commemorate the Great Runus arriving. Anna declines, but when the merchant offers her turrón, things change. This causes Anna to accept without hesitation, and the two break out into weird dance choreography, which can be seen in the music video from 1980 for the song Once in a Lifetime by Talking Heads. This music video had actually been referenced a lot in Anna's movements at this point during the series, and frankly I'm upset I didn't catch them the first time despite having such a fond memory of this song as a kid. Turrón itself, from what I could find, is a very popular dessert food in Peru, typically eaten in October during the Lord of Miracles celebration. The Great Runus seems to also be a lord of miracles, granting a wish to any who find him. So I guess it's kind of fitting. She just barely makes it to the Great Runus. As the timer reached 0, the Great Runus dematerialized and was absorbed into the face of a woman that Anna was also caught into. When she awakes inside the woman's face, she is greeted with a mountain of bodies and appears to be inside a void of infinite stairways. Again, very, very normal. She ascends the first one she sees and enters an odd room where she meets a man called Ulysses. Ulysses was confirmed to be designed after Lord Farquaad, and his odd speech pattern is believed to be inspired by Max Headroom or the Master from Fallout. Ulysses is also the name of a 1922 novel written by James Joyce, where the writing style changes every chapter. A funny coincidence, but one that I'm certain probably played a part in this character's creation. After all, have you seen how he speaks? Ulysses tells Anna where she is, and that since she just barely made it, she can no longer leave until the next celebration, which is in 10,000 years.
That's a lot!
With Ulysses' guidance and doubt, Anna, with clearly a lot of time on her hands, begins her pursuit to the Great Runus, and jumps into a pool of code. When Anna lands, we see a big open world, filled with bodies, hourglasses, and a nearby meadow. Anna makes her way through the hourglass meadow where she meets the shepherd, who watches over the hourglass dogs we saw in an auction party. The shepherd's design is also inspired by Picasso, Joel taking inspiration from a painting by Norma Salt titled Picasso's Cat. The shepherd speaks to Anna in Russian, and when the two interact, she says, "Another Anna troublemaker." Fun fact, her translation is actually correct, and Dream Barbecue confirms that Anna is a species that I suppose all share the same anatomical resemblance. Anna asks if she can see the Great Runus, and the shepherd responds angrily by beating her to death and telling her that she missed her chance. But lo and behold, Anna's Turon makes her go crazy, and the two dance like before. The shepherd accepts and takes her Turon and agrees to let Anna pass, giving her a blood ID. See this tank she drives in this scene? Okay, when researching this series and the creative process of Joel, I've found that it's very possible that this tank is inspired by a game made in the Temple OS engine called Crashout, which I couldn't find any footage from. I'm unsure if it's a reference or sheer coincidence due to the striking resemblance, but I will tell you what I did learn about this Temple OS thing while I'm here. Temple OS was made by a programmer named Terry Davis, who after numerous schizophrenic episodes, made the engine completely from scratch, and in the programming community is the equivalent of a man building a skyscraper completely from scratch without help. He did it because he believed God told him to, and unfortunately did get banned on YouTube due to his vocabulary.
You must answer, is this delicious or is this divine intellect?
Unfortunately, did pass away, but despite everything, it was very cool to learn during the research portion of this video. Anna swims into the ocean of code where she crosses the void of bodies and reaches the catwalk of damnation. Again, very normal. But speaking of this catwalk, if you recall the comment made by Ulysses, the bodies seen throughout the holy lands of the Great Runus seem to be people who failed to reach the Great Runus, crushing under the spiritual pressure of this place, and have effectively been rotting and or suffering here for more than 10,000 years.
That's a lot!
As Anna traverses this place, she is drawn to the floating banana in the middle, as frankly anyone would be. When she reaches it, we meet two new characters, and Joel's favorites as of me recording this, Maria and Gabo. Gabo is seemingly the first real human we've seen in this series, and is holding a plate where Maria's blue geometric head rests. Gabo speaks in English, and has a seemingly limited vocabulary. Maria, on the other hand, speaks Japanese, and is very aggressive and straightforward in how she speaks. Gabo and Maria were inspired by a religious painting, believed to be the one of Salome bearing the head of St. John the Baptist. This was painted in 1631 by Guido Reni, and it shows Salome holding a plate with, you guessed it, St. John's head on it, in a similar fashion to what we see here. Maria asks Anna why she's looking at the banana, and angrily asks Anna to identify herself. Anna hands her the blood ID, and since it was given to her by the shepherd, Maria is angry because it tastes nothing like her. To which Anna responds with,
You're all living a lie!
She said calmly. Maria then gets weirded out and begrudgingly lets her pass. And then Gabo says, drink the blood and smoke the banana. This line is a reference from Space Funeral, an RPG from 2010, where Dracula says, I like to drink the blood and smoke the weed. Joel was originally going to have Gabo say the original line, but feared problems with YouTube, so he changed it to banana. So maybe everyone here is actually just high off of their minds, and Mario is scolding Anna for being a pothead. Anna continues through the door and goes into the third hole that Mario mentioned and winds up in a desert. Anna wanders aimlessly, following the street lamps that are there for some reason sticking out from the sand, and makes her way to an upside down pyramid with a white oak door, and a biblically accurate angel guarding it. It is here where we meet my favorite minor character in the entire series.
Hey, what's the data, Theta? Hey, you're pretty acute for a newbie, but now's not the time for me to go off on a tangent. The name's Findall. Don't wear it out. Do you know why camels don't do professional wrestling? Because they... That's dolphin humor for you.
To answer your question, no. I don't have any snobby theory or explanation for everything you just saw. As far as you know, yes, that biblically accurate angel turned into a pink dolphin that speaks in puns and rearranged its entire anatomy for the sake of a punchline. What a guy he is. Anna and Findall speak friendly to each other, and it's revealed that Findall is basically the bouncer of the Great Runas, being the guy Anna has to speak to before going inside. Findall prepares Anna to go inside, telling her she has to go through the interview ritual, the ritual in question being a fist fight. Findall smacks the shit out of Anna, and when Anna has a breakdown, telling him to hit her harder and finish the job, Findall just calms her down and tells her she doesn't need to do the ritual. All she has to do is stain the water red and the door can open. Anna then follows a weird Eye of Ender to a big cauldron guarded by a purple witch. She stains the water red, assuming with her blood. Anna enters the wacky pathway where she reaches the Great Runas. As Anna's about to make her wish, Mooney interrupts her out of nowhere. It's here we find out not only did Mooney somehow make her way through the Great Runas, despite being trampled by the crowd and left behind from the start of the video, but also managed to get there before Anna did. Mooney then begrudgingly reveals that her wish was to be thinner, and we see her crawl out of her shell and have a more humanoid appearance, and slowly during the conversation leading up to this reveal, we see Anna's face turn completely yellow, which turns some heads. If you remember what Mooney said in the start of the episode, you'll remember that she said whoever makes it to the Great Runas first has to pay the debts of the loser. I feel out of all the episodes we've gone over, this is probably the scene that's interpreted differently the most by everyone who's seen it. Now, I'm not entirely sure what she meant by whoever makes it to the Great Runas first has to pay the debts of the loser. I don't know if it's meant to be the loser has to pay the debts of the winner, or maybe it's just intended to be like that because it's meant to be confusing, as everything else in this world is. When Mooney said pay the debts of the loser, we can see Anna's face go entirely yellow. Maybe part of the reason that she was also so eager to get to the Great Runas first is because maybe she feels a bit responsible for some of Anna's emotional turmoil. So maybe Mooney made it so that Anna's own emotions were able to stabilize for just a moment, and her entire face goes yellow, which usually would mean that she's happy, considering her yellow side is happy. But she doesn't exactly look happy here. She has like a grimace on her face as she shakes her head in disdain for Mooney's choice, kind of like a forced tranquility. Another popular theory I saw among people in the comment section of this video a long time ago was that Anna was probably going to wish to end her own life due to her emotional stability and prone to meltdowns, especially in this episode, which is probably why Mooney felt such an urgent need to speed ahead in front of Anna to get there first. Either way, Anna's entire body or just face being yellow is clearly something crazy that literally goes against her entire anatomy and character design, and I feel like might have created some emotional instability, which probably resulted in her conflict in the next episode. Power of Potluck. This is the fourth, and as of writing the script was the most recent episode of Anna, but as I was making this video, Joel just teased another one called Dating Oblivion. I am excited a very normal amount about that. This episode is probably the one I'll be talking about the least, given that its premise and story is a bit more direct and easily explained than the prior ones, if you can believe it, which is still saying something. This episode starts again from Anna's perspective, her slowly reaching out and ringing a doorbell, whilst talking to herself, questioning her actions while Mooney shouts at her to run from something unforeseen at the moment. We don't know why she does this yet, but that it has something to do with the concept of fun. Not too long after, it cuts to the doorbell's perspective, and we see that the blue side of Anna's face has detached completely off her face, seemingly being its own consciousness asking for fun. Anna makes her way inside, and here it's seen that the episode took a different approach, showing a top-down perspective typically seen in games like Diablo, RuneScape, and Baldur's Gate, instead of the first-person perspective we've seen up until now. Anna approaches the elevators inside, where she sees Ivy, and asks her to sing her towards the fun. Ivy notices that Enna looks starved of fun, to which Enna denies. Ivy gives her the theater program, which I feel is probably just a map of the place, and at this point it can probably be deduced that fun is a metaphor for happiness or fulfillment that Enna is searching for. As Enna makes her way through this place, she meets weird people and experiences acts that are supposed to make her feel different, supposed to bring her fun, but rather than going along with it like she usually would in the series' prior entries, she's just confused. She's confused because all the things that are allegedly supposed to make her feel different and happy are not really doing anything for her. In Act 1 Display, she and her sadness tumor play around in what looks like an endless jungle gym. In Act 2 The Rising, I seriously couldn't tell you what looks like is going on, but if I had to guess, it might be music. Not just because Enna talks about rhythm, but frankly, how else can you perceive a wiggly pillar of spinning faces like straight out of Game of Thrones? And in Act 3 and 4, Crescendo of a Descent, she is offered to participate in theater. All these different opportunities and experiences are introduced to her to give her some semblance of joy, and yet they do nothing. Eventually, her confusion is interrupted by a raspy voice, and Enna stumbles into the final act, Act 5, Therapy, which speaks for itself. Enna and the therapist talk about her journey through this place, and Enna struggles with comprehending everything meant to make her feel the fun. She says that she feels abysmal, like she's in a stew. She acknowledges the methods that are supposed to make her feel happy and why they would work on anyone, but she just cannot seem to get a grip on anything. Homegirl is depressed and detached from herself, literally, and the world around her. And honestly, that's real as shit. Eventually, the therapist says that she's apparently been here several times, and that Enna will never find true fun or happiness just in therapy. The therapist tells her that fun and happiness is elusive and to learn to appreciate life in the little moments, and that as long as she has that resolution, she will no longer need to come back there. The therapist then releases a get out of my house beam, and Enna is now back outside the building. We then hear Mooney calling out to her angrily, saying that she was effectively just supposed to ding dong ditch and not go inside, or as Mooney calls it, ring wrong run. Mooney asks how Enna liked it there, and Enna just goes, eh. Then we get a period of silence where Enna looks at this really weird person that's with Mooney, said person being a long dog in a sweater with a zipper on its mouth. The zipper then opens up and a small man comes out, and then Mooney just puts the man in her face and says, "What?" I do find it funny and a bit creepy that the last time we saw this Enna is when she got therapy and realized the stuff around her just might not make sense. It's kind of odd. And with Dating Oblivion on the way, it seems like this episode will once again tackle Enna's emotions and maybe even her humanity and finding herself as a person. Now, normally, this is where I would go in to talk about Dream Barbecue, but given that Dream Barbecue itself is not complete, and there's only one chapter of the game out right now, and that chapter itself being very hard to explain given that you can't exactly beat that game without giving birth, and no, I'm not going to clarify what I mean by that, it leaves me with a lot of reason to want to wait until the game itself is fully finished before I talk about it as an entire experience. Because while yes, this is still Enna, it is so vastly different from its prior entries that I wish to wait until the experience is fully released to talk about it extensively, no matter how long it takes. But much like Enna, it seems that this version of Enna, instead of being restricted by emotional instability, is restricted by her devotion to her job, as despite all she goes through and all the weird people she meets while traveling the world to meet the genie so they can get rid of the fog and find the boss, she just always, despite how angry she is, expresses a devotion to her job. And also seemingly goes into some odd flashbacks where Enna is in a desolate field with a red sky and things coming through the sky and bullets falling. It really feels like Dream Barbecue is setting up something big with either Enna in general or this Enna specific backstory of maybe being a war criminal and getting to understand this really weird world. So because of the lack of Dream Barbecue that's currently out right now and how much time would have to go in, because I can't stress enough that Dream Barbecue feels like its own separate thing, and I don't feel like I would do it justice talking about it amongst this stuff. Now, with all episodes underway, what can exactly be inferred from Enna both as a character existing in the world that she does? Well, directly not much. This series, at least, makes it very obvious that Enna herself is an outcast. She is the only one who looks the way she does in a world where nothing seems to make sense and most of its population are unfulfilled or dead inside. constantly searching for meaning and fulfillment. And she is someone who always has conflicting emotions. She herself exists as someone who has what those people want but can't exactly control it because her emotions are always just constantly flipping or something. I don't know. That's honestly it. I mean, Anna is clearly someone who suffers from a lot of emotional instability, and such emotional instability seems to affect how she goes about her day to day, whether it be warping warnings of people who try to help her, to in the midst of her most vulnerable and emotional moments, she seeks to either apologize or just distract herself from it by going on an elaborate side quest. At all times, it really just does feel like Anna is trying to just exist and is having trouble doing that, which honestly is very relatable. But I really feel like Joel G's next installment of this Anna's story, called Dating Oblivion, in the teaser trailer, it shows human Anna separated from her whimsical, dual-colored persona. And I really feel like we might be reaching what can be a conclusion to this Anna story, where she finally finds herself and learns what it means to exist. What it means to exist for herself in her own mind as her own person. Another thing that I did want to mention is that if you look at both Anna and Dream Barbecue Anna's designs, you'll notice that the emotions that are mean and sad, or ones that probably someone would render the most unstable should they be in the hands of someone very emotionally immature, those are the ones that are very rigid and spiky and otherwise inconsistent in their overall anatomy. And what you will also notice as you observe her reactions with both herself and the world around her, these emotions are the only ones that can overpower her current emotion, and even the slightest bit that leaks from this side can change her entire state of being. Even in literally the first episode, Auction Day, after Anna has her short breakdown, you can see her literally reset herself and say, sorry about that. So I call this the Anna skin theory, and I feel like every single Anna, or maybe just these two, because I really can't tell, because despite there being so much of this series, we still know so little. Does that make sense? I feel like the smooth portion of their bodies are emotions that are very take it or leave it, not much to them, but I feel like the side of them that's very polygonal and rigid are the side of them that's supposed to be otherwise toxic or just uncontrollable and a bit more powerful. But I also just feel like a lot of opinions and deeper meanings in this show can just be chalked up to, it probably means something, but we'll never know. And that's about it. Thank you all for watching. I'm not entirely sure how to close out this video, I'm not gonna lie to you. This is a video that I've wanted to make for such a long time now, and to finally make it and talk about a series that brings me such an odd sense of comfort is really nice. Anna is a series I love to just throw on whenever I'm feeling a little sad, or whenever I just want to watch something or have background noise. It's a show that has both a really nice, charming soundtrack, and also the dialogue between the characters, as nonsense as they might be, are really fun to listen to, even if I don't understand it. And it's still something that I'd always recommend to people to watch if they want a small, short indie series to watch on YouTube. I always tell people to watch Anna. It really is just a show that I really, really like. Thank you all for watching and listening to me talk about this. The next video coming out is actually going to be one that is very important to me as well. But that's about it. As always, everyone, take care. I love you, and I hope everyone has an amazing rest of their day. Goodbye, everyone, and see you soon.